Kia ora, I'm Bruce Munro, and with me is International Relations Specialist Professor Robert Patman, and this is Global Insight. Fighting has broken out again between two former Soviet states. Is Turkey's leader Recep Erdogan using it as a stepping stone to re-establish the Ottoman Empire? Welcome, Robert.
Morning, Bruce.
Armenia and Azerbaijan, which are wedged between Turkey and the Caspian Sea, they're at war with each other, and not for the first time. What's going on?
Well, Armenia and Azerbaijan are fighting over a territory, an enclave called Nagorno-Karabakh, and that enclave, Nagorno-Karabakh, is actually Armenian-controlled, but it's internationally recognised to be part of Azerbaijan. And there's been long festering tensions over this territory between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And it goes back to the Soviet era when Joseph Stalin in the early 20s, as the paramount leader of the Soviet Union, effectively gave the territory to Azerbaijan, despite the fact it's largely Armenian populated, and Armenians are Christian as opposed to Azerbaijan, which is an Islamic country. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, that led to a full-blown war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And unfortunately, tensions have resurfaced again in the last couple of years, and there's been, on September the 27th, there was the reactivation of military conflict, and it would seem, more than 150 people have been killed.
Turkey has gotten itself involved, and it also appears that Azerbaijan is bringing mercenaries in from Syria to take part in the fight. What's the broader context and significance of this?
Well, first of all, it's Nagorno-Karabakh is situated in the South Caucasus, which is important strategically because of its energy resources. And it's fair to say that one of the sparks for the intensification of tension around the Nagorno-Karabakh has been the role of Turkey. And Turkey has never been a friend of Armenia. Their mutual hostility goes back to the early part of the 20th century. It was the famous genocide, which Turkey has always denied that it committed against Armenia. So historically, relations between Turkey and Armenia have always been difficult, and that means that Turkey has always backed Azerbaijan in its conflict with Armenia. Since the early 90s, since the really big flare-up of the Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict in the early 90s, Turkey has not had diplomatic relations with Armenia. I think a second factor relates to something we've already touched on, is that Turkey gets its energy, it gets gas, it imports gas from Azerbaijan, which is a very important source of energy for Turkey. And also the money that it pays Azerbaijan for the gas imports is largely spent by Azerbaijan on Turkish weapons. A third reason, I think, is geopolitical. It's quite clear under Mr. Erdogan. Mr. Erdogan's a populist leader. He believes that Turkey has a bit of an international mission, and under his leadership, Turkey has been heavily involved in both Syria and Libya. And he believes that Turkey expands its chances of shaping diplomatic negotiations whenever they occur if it's heavily involved in its neighbourhood. And there is hints here, it shouldn't be forgotten that Turkey and Russia found themselves on opposing sides in both Libya and Syria. Maybe Mr. Erdogan, who's been irritated by Mr. Putin's role, particularly in Syria, perhaps there's a little bit of payback here. Perhaps there's a chance to score a few points at Moscow's expense by putting the pressure on Azerbaijan. What we have noticed is that Turkey's strong support or heightened support for Azerbaijan has heightened Azerbaijan's determination to dislodge the Armenian population from the Nagorno-Karabakh. But it's a potentially dangerous situation because there is a defence agreement between Russia and Armenia. Now, Russia does maintain a position of neutrality. It has good relations with both Azerbaijan and Armenia, economic ties with both, but on balance, it has a deeper commitment with Armenia. So if push comes to shove, if Azerbaijan starts to get the upper hand in the military conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia may well look to Moscow for military support, which will put Turkey and Russia on a collision course.
Are there signs that Erdogan means to make good on his talk about re-establishing the Ottoman Empire?
Well, I think for the reasons we've just gone through, he's certainly trying to increase the regional role of Turkey in places like Syria, Libya, and now Nagorno-Karabakh by supporting Azerbaijan. So I think it's fair to say that Mr. Erdogan believes that part of his domestic legitimacy in Turkey rests on, if you like, making Turkey a much more active foreign policy player. And of course it does have a history of this, hence the Ottoman Empire parallels. I think it'll be hard pushed for anyone to create an empire in the 21st century, but I think there is certainly an element of this involved.
How should the international community be responding?
Well, so far, the UN, Russia, the United States and the EU have all called for a ceasefire. And, you know, as I say, it's been an uneasy status quo in Nagorno-Karabakh for a long time. And it would seem that Armenia could probably live more easily than with the status quo than Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan sees this enclave as a direct assault on its territorial integrity. And they want basically to eject the Armenians from that territory and reclaim it for themselves. And so you can see why there is such an intractable conflict, really. And Armenia sees this as part of its own territory. So what should happen? Ideally, it would be good if Mr. Putin and Mr. Erdogan can start talking, because I think clearly they're the two most powerful powers in the region, and their influence could, I think, result in a cooling of tensions. At least one of them, Turkey at the moment, doesn't seem to believe that's in its interest. So yeah, I think that it's certainly important that Turkey and Russia play a more constructive role than they have been of late. It would be nice if the UN Security Council started to take a role, but I cannot really see that happening because the veto powers of players like Russia and China. You know, it's very difficult to see. The UN was largely sidelined during the Syrian conflict, and I think, again, this conflict sadly points to the lack of international machinery for resolving such bitter and sometimes dangerous conflicts.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. Catch us next time on Global Insight. Noho ora mai.